The House settlement's a week old. We unpack what this looks like for the women. You're on the Hoops Cap.
Let's get it. 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 Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome into the Hoops Cap Pod. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, with T. Baker with me as always on a Friday. I want to say a quick thank you to all that are listening to us on wherever you find your podcast and also on YouTube. Like us, subscribe, review, whatever to help us out. All right, T. As far as the House settlement goes, what's the first impression as far as the women's game goes? Because I feel like there's a lot of chatter about how this is going to go strictly to men's basketball or to football. But what about the women in particular, our UConn women?
Yeah, well, it sits at an interesting intersection, right? The payment piece, because Title IX, which has been the law of the land since 1972, states that women must have the same educational opportunities as men, which extends to sports, has extended to sports, but over the years has not always been implemented as such. And in this case, with revenue sharing, it's sort of a new era of sports. So we're not exactly sure how it's going to play out. We know that during the Biden administration, there was an appeal that was blocked as it related to basically applying Title IX to the future payments that will come out of revenue sharing, saying that it doesn't apply in that case. But what is being appealed now is actually the back pay. So as part of that same settlement, there was negotiated back pay, about $2.8 billion in damages that'll be paid back to players through 2016. So that's the statute of limitations or whatever. Back payments are going to be owed to those athletes from 2016 who didn't receive payments in college that are now eligible through rev share. So, it was made, the decision was made that about 90% of that back pay was expected to go to football or men's basketball players. And this was based on sports economists and lawyers basically coming up with a formula that those sports brought in the most revenue. So therefore, the most back pay would be offered to those athletes. But since the settlement, an appeal has been made with several women's athletes who competed during those years, basically saying that this is a violation of Title IX and that the payment should be more equitable. So it's a little bit of a legal gray area. What this means is that it will halt back damage payments to athletes, but it shouldn't and it does not impact the implementation of revenue sharing that begins for current and future athletes starting on July 1st.
What do you think the significance of this is? Because I think most people would argue, and whether you're a fan of women's sports or not, whether you're a fan of women's basketball, that when they did this formula, that they're doing this in good faith, where from 2016 to, I guess, now, that is the reality, that the men's game and that the football kind of drives the boat. That doesn't preclude any women from competing or receiving the some of this settlement money. But where do you kind of stand on that? Like, and how would you look at this appeal from not only from a legal standpoint, because we're not lawyers, but kind of like from a logic standpoint?
I mean, it's complicated, right? I think from my perspective as an advocate and someone who covers women's sports, I think that there's been a variety of situations throughout history where women weren't granted the full equality under Title IX. Like, just because it was law doesn't mean that the law was being followed.
Sure.
So this could be in 10 years down the line another example of us seeing that same dynamic. And so, sure, it's true that men's sports, and in particular those revenue-bearing sports like football and men's basketball, are the ones driving the revenue. So it could make logical or economic sense to pay those athletes the most money because they brought the most money into the university. However, these are educational institutions and have different laws governing them. So it's not like Nike or Adidas deciding to pay men's athletes more. Those are private corporations. These are educational institutions which are bound by Title IX laws. So it's complicated. In my opinion, it's not like a question of like what's right or wrong as much as it's like, how are we interpreting Title IX in this particular instance in this new era of sports? Does it apply to revenue sharing or not? And those are the legal conversations we're going to have in the coming weeks and months and years.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think it'll be interesting too in these appeals. And again, I am not a lawyer, don't pretend to be one, but it'll be interesting to kind of know in particular over the last few years, right? If we're talking about back pay for athletes that played in the last 3-4 years, I mean, there's been some pretty big time female athletes that have dominated the landscape, and I'm just curious, like how they're reconciling that. Is there like a blip? Like I don't know how they're doing kind of the years of back pay. Are they lump sums? Are they, you know what I mean? Are they all like, are they a percentage of the larger pot, like how most class action lawsuits work? I'm just curious, like how that will break down.
Yeah, my understanding is it's not lump sum, but it's a series of payments on a monthly or yearly basis to athletes. So, but the question you raise is a good one. It's like, how do we reconcile this growth of women's sports? And I think like women's sports has been on an upward trajectory for years, decades now. It's not just over the past few years, but there was sort of this like exponential growth in the past several years. I think that what my major argument back is that men's sports have had this massive head start because of how they've been covered. There has always been more coverage of men's sports. There's been more access to men's sports. So of course, those are the sports that get the most eyeballs because they're most likely on TV. They're the most promoted. So it's kind of a different starting point when you think about it that way, from the perspective of like, where could women's sports be if it was properly covered these past several years, if it was promoted in the appropriate ways. We saw that surge in women's sports over the past couple of years because for the first time, the Final Four was on ABC. All games were on ESPN. So like, if you invest in the sport, you get investments back. And I think people are just beginning to learn that. So it's a very interesting time to see how that plays out in this era of rev share. Like, how do women's sports continue to grow, and do they actually bring in those revenue targets for schools? And we know that units for the first time are implemented on the women's basketball side, so that there's actual income coming in based on NCAA tournament appearances and performance. That's always kind of, historically for several decades now been the case on the men's side. So we're just beginning to see the investment in women's sports to be able to see the payoff. So I think it's a complicated question in that way, because we don't know what could have been had these sports been invested in appropriately from the beginning.
Well, I'll add another layer to that, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a soccer or a football fan in the sense of this kind of European style than it's come to the States. But soccer's on all the time now. It is on all the time. And not only do you get the love that it gets from like the grassroots levels, I think everybody's kid has played soccer at some point, or you have a nephew or a niece or wherever, right? But when you do that, and it's also covered and it's also on television, then you get people that want to play it and get interested in it and follow it. Like, I've never seen so many of my friends that I grew up with said, "Oh yeah, that Liverpool." I'm like, "What? I don't get that." But the same can be said, I have friends that I talk to now about Paige Bueckers in the WNBA. Like, you know what I mean? So like, just using that as a current example, you're right. Like, if things were covered on an equal basis, who knows where the women's game would be today? Maybe it's not on equal footing, but it's hard to say it couldn't have been, because we don't know. Simple as that.
We don't know what history never allowed us to see. And like, I think another interesting development that recently happened in the past week or so is that the Women's Softball World Series received the most viewership ever. And we saw that the MLB invested in the Athletes Unlimited Pro Softball League. So there's this surge right now in investment in women's sports. And I think that it's really worth taking note of, to see, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, what that means for what sports bring in revenue, and how the funding and the money that's brought in is appropriately allocated across, the genders.
Let me ask you a real quick question. Do you think that, do you think that the W as we're about to talk about Huskies in the W, is doing a disservice to what's being brought to the table with the Caitlin Clark phenomenon by not kind of leaning into it more and only kind of focusing on the negative folks that kind of interjected themselves into that world, right? Because you just mentioned that the softball had the highest viewership, right? Well, she has the highest viewership, and for whatever the case may be, and I think I know why, but I'm curious from your perspective.
I mean, I think that the WNBA is always on this sort of like line of how to present itself. I think that you know the history of the league is one where certain players received certain media attention, and those were the ones who were most traditionally feminine, the ones who were straight or straight passing. And there's always been those complications with society. Sports is always a reflection of society, right? And with this Caitlin Clark conversation, Angel Reese conversation, that is again a reflection of society. We're seeing a Black woman and a white woman, and we're seeing the ways that they present themselves on screen, on social media, in the games, and we're seeing the way that plays out in positive and negative ways. It just sort of reflects society. I think that the WNBA needs to do a lot of work in this coming CBA negotiations to get players the proper compensation and to make sure that their players are taken care of, because the reality is if they're not, these players have other opportunities now. They could play in Unrivaled. They're collecting paychecks in college, right? There could be other career paths than joining the WNBA if the money's not there. So the truth is the WNBA needs to catch up financially to pay these players what they're worth, Caitlin Clark and otherwise. I think the WNBA is promoting mostly Caitlin Clark, so I think they are seizing that opportunity. Like, she's on the most national televised games, she's in all the promos, so I think they've caught on that she's the reason that a lot of people are watching. But once you have those fans, how do you keep them? And so this past couple weeks when Caitlin Clark was out, there was this whole dialogue like, can the WNBA survive, and all this stuff, which I think is a little bit dramatic, but it's true that some people only tune in to see Caitlin Clark, but what the WNBA needs to do is capitalize on that by promoting other players. So when there's another WNBA game on that doesn't have Caitlin Clark, people still want to tune in, and the rates of viewership are still high.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I hope that the W learns that just because Caitlin Clark is the fascination today doesn't mean she will always be. But you kind of have to ride that wave, and you have to do it because the NBA used to be on tape delay, and then these guys came along called Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and saved the NBA. And so a lot of people just tuned in to watch Larry. A lot of people just tuned in to watch Magic. So that's okay. There are a lot of other great players in the league back then in 79 and 80. So and I'm sure those guys still got pissed off about that. Like, I feel like it's normal. I think the thing that frustrates me about the coverage of it is like, of course, the women that are in the league are going to get pissed off if all you're caring about is the player that just got in the league, right? But that happened in men's sports too. Who cares? Like, that's what makes it great. Like, now people are going at Caitlin Clark because they're trying to prove that she is not the only thing to watch, and that's okay.
Right. I think that the difference in the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese versus the, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson thing is like they just play very different positions. And so the rivalry piece is kind of hard to consider. Like, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are very different basketball players, play different positions. So that rivalry piece is like, it's not a one-to-one comparison in terms of the type of basketball player they are. And I guess it wasn't with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird either, but that's the piece that I'm like, are we focusing too much on this rivalry that maybe doesn't have as much juice as we thought? Or is that a worthy investment? And I think that's the next evolution of it, is like, how do these college rivalries translate to the W or not? And how does the WNBA lean into that or not? And I think in this case, they're leaning hard into it. And we'll see if the rivalry continues to deliver for years to come, because the product also needs to be there. Like, the last couple times the Fever have played the Sky, they've smacked them, right? So how do we get teams on an even playing field where there actually is the potential for a rivalry between these two players?
Yeah, I think that's the other thing too, is like, and unfortunately, if you're an Angel Reese fan, sorry, close your ears for a second. She's just not as good a basketball player as Caitlin Clark. That's just my opinion. I don't think anybody would argue that. But where Angel Reese thrives is if she's a part of a team that is very good, like the LSU team that won the national championship. she's a vibes player. She's an absolute kind of hustle player. She's kind of like Dennis Rodman on the women's side. And I don't mean that as a disparaging remark, because Dennis was unorthodox and he would get like 14 rebounds to himself the way she does, because he wasn't a good offensive player the way she's not. So it's just one of those things where if she can surround herself with good players, and she plays a Caitlin Clark, down the road, who's a really good player, that's where that rivalry can kind of become something. If Angel Reese's team kind of rate elevates, because Caitlin Clark is the player that's elevating other players because of what she does. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and in the Bird Johnson thing, it was also about the Celtics and the Lakers, right? It was
right.
So in the absence of having that, like if this guy kind of continue to not deliver and get smacked by the Fever every time, that's not fun anymore, right? So that's the piece that I want to see come into focus is like, sure, it's about these two players, but they also have to be on good teams that actually compete against each other for that rivalry to continue to get juice over the years.
All right. I love it. I love how we delved into Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, like just real quick. I thought that was a nice transition. But hey, it's all relevant because we're going to talk about Huskies and the W here right after the break. All right, we're back on the Hoops Cat Pod with T. Baker, our Friday co-host. How about our girl Paige? I know Nafisa Collier is the MVP frontrunner, but Paige dropping 35 coming off of concussion protocol. What were your thoughts about that? That game was ridiculous.
Yeah, she, the ability she had to come back out of concussion protocol, her illness, and just return and have her best game of her career so far just speaks to the player she is. It was cool as a, fan of Diana Taurasi and the legacy of the game to see it happen in Phoenix on the house that Diana built. Mm-hmm. Paige also kind of pulled her shorts down just a little bit to have that Diana swag. So I thought there was just some really cool like Husky allegory and like continuity in that. But yeah, Paige is a hooper. Everyone knows it. I had no doubts that her game would translate to the WNBA. She's definitely the Rookie of the Year front runner. She plays with just a comfortability, a confidence. She's already the leader on a team that's full of veterans, right? I think people just kind of gravitate to her energy and her ability to play team basketball. So seeing her dominate in that way, what was it, 5 3-pointers? So, and they weren't, right on the line 3-pointers either. Some of those were pretty far out shots. So, Paige is a hooper. We know it. I think that it's going to be interesting to see if Dallas can make some sort of run. They're 1-10 this year. It's looking pretty bleak. So maybe, they tank and get AZ and we have a Paige and AZ
slow down. Don't waste the segment. We don't want to give away the good stuff. That's a conversation for another day. Maybe they do tank. This is the conversation. We're gonna go with it. If they tank and get the number 1 pick, do you think they go with AZ Fudd?
I don't know. Probably not. I think they might go Olivia Miles. I'm not sure. We'll see how it plays out this year. I think Olivia Miles is the projected number 1, but maybe Paige, and AZ want to play together, and Paige has some sway. She could LeBron her way into that pick, right. Make some calls. So I would love to see it. That would be a very cool thing. They would love it, and I would love it. Fans would love it.
Oh, man.
It's the kind of a UConn. It's kind of the Diana Taurasi Sue Bird thing we never got to see.
Right.
In the NBA, like that elite backcourt that translates to the pro stage.
Man, that would be dope. Now you got me all shook. Like, I want to talk about that, but no. If that happened, what would be the funniest thing is like every UConn fan's rocking like Dallas jerseys all through the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
All through the state of Connecticut. It'd be hysterical. All right. We'll save that. If they continue their precipitous drop, they're 1-10 as we speak. I was going to say, I know Paige has only played 7 games. She missed some time, but she's averaging almost 18 points, 17.6, 5 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.9, almost 2 steals, a block. She's only turning it over twice a game, so she's got a 6-to-2 assist to turnover ratio, 4-to-1. Shooting it at 45% from 3. Oh, Paige, only 80% from free throw line. What's going on, girl? We need to have a conversation. That's awful for her. Like she used to get I'm seriously, Gino would get upset like when she'd be like, he's like, dude, you're gonna miss free throws. She was just like, oh, that efficiency. Like listen, you gotta bend your knees, Paige. Gotta use your legs. Let's go. 80%.
I'm curious what it is. I mean, they have so much talent. I know, their head coach, Chris Coplains, is getting a lot of heat on the internet, but who isn't getting a lot of heat on the internet, right? Who among us isn't getting a lot of heat on the internet?
Right.
He's still in a new he's in a new coaching role, new talent. The pieces do have to fit together. I think people think that sometimes talent can just lead and lend itself to winning, but there's so much that needs to blend and figuring out the rotations. And so I don't know. I think it's looking bleak for them this season, but maybe they could pick it up and make a little bit of a momentum run to get into a better place.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know enough about the head coach, but sometimes I don't know. Sometimes when a team has a ton of talent and the wins aren't coming, even though that the chemistry has to mesh, that has a lot to do with the coach. You know what I mean? Like, is he putting them in the right spot? Do they feel comfortable running into the sets? Like, because they certainly have, let's put it this way. They have enough people where if the offense breaks down, you can go get a bucket with Auriemma, you can get a bucket with Paige. So it's not like it's not like they're manufacturing offense. Like these are pros, like they can figure it out. So it's really just about like, how are you putting the team together? And like, are you putting them in the best position to win? So he probably should be getting the heat he's getting. But
yeah, I mean that's why you hire a coach, right? They get the heat. That's kind of part of the job. And so he's a first head coach. He's a young guy. Like I think that there could be, it's what you accept when you accept a head coaching role is kind of all the blame.
Yeah, listen, and that's also going to listen. If people are going to continue to watch the W, just don't get comfortable with coaches because it's just the reality. Like this Dallas team can win a title 2 years from now. I guarantee that's not going to be who the head coach is because just unless they have a crazy turnaround, you're going to end up. It's pro sports. You go with people who you feel like are going to get you there this year. You could have won a title 2 years ago. Hello, Michael Malone from Denver, and then get fired. So
yeah,
it happens all over pro sports.
Well, it's like Tom Thibodeau took the Knicks to the first Eastern
Tom Thibodeau, yeah,
finals in however many couple decades,
25 years, yeah.
That's pro sports.
Yes, Tom Thibodeau, and listen, it happens in baseball too. Like there was when I was a kid, what's his name? Buck Showalter was a famous manager for the Yankees. They go to the ALCS, they lose, they hire Joe Torre, they go on that crazy run from 96 to 2000. So it's like that sucks for Buck Showalter because he was there the year before, and you know what I mean. Like he could have been the guy for that. So it's life. Some people are destined to be was it always the bridesmaid, never the bride? Like that could be the case here.
Coaching is a tough career path. That is for sure.
Absolutely. All right. We didn't even get into Nafisa Collier, who is absolutely dominating in the W. She's basically averaging a triple double. She's a monster. She just is. Is there a bigger transformation? Because she was great with UConn, but I don't know, man. Like for me, like I feel like she might be the biggest leap from college to pros.
I don't know. I mean, I think she's always been doing this. Like, I think she's. I
don't disagree. I'm just saying, personally, like in terms of, hey, go get me 40. Like,
yeah.
That her team was really good. So like, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's just to kind of see her be this dominant is it's great. I just think it was less expected than others. Let's put it that way.
There's a quiet confidence about Nafisa Collier, and I think that's part of what contributes to this, like, sort of like, this image of her as a player who isn't a superstar, but she is a superstar. And, her and Katie Lou, when they graduated, were the highest scoring senior duo that ever passed through UConn. So she's been scoring. She's a national champion. She's a multiple Final Four participant, so an Olympic team member, but she does it in this quiet way where she's never too high or low. She just delivers, and I think that's what's so impressive about her. But this year is just a breakout season, kind of as expected. She had an incredible unrivaled season. She's been on this trajectory, I think she's MVP this year at this point. Like, she gets my vote at this point. And she's part of a Lynx program, a Lynx franchise that has a history of dominance, of winning, coaching Cheryl Reeves. So she's the centerpiece on a really talented Lynx team. And I mean, they're my national champion favorites, no doubt. They were so close last season, and I think Nafisa's only elevated her game since then. So, yeah, it's been really special to watch her play and to just kind of make her way into this upper echelon of the league.
Without a doubt. Be interesting to see what happens as the year goes on. We're going to take a quick break and talk about UConn's non-conference preview. Why I think going back to 20 games is a big mistake by the Big East. But we'll discuss it all after the break. You're back on the Hoops Cap Pod with your boy here, Mark Zanetto, and our host, as always, on Fridays, T. Baker. Comes out Monday, but we're here Friday morning, grinding it out for you guys, making sure that you have the good UConn content that you deserve. So this non-conference, the first thing that jumps out at me in terms of the preview is, could you give me a good reason why the Big East, when most conferences that have realized that they've gotten less bids because their conference is weaker than, say, the SEC or the Big Ten, have gone to less conference games, that the Big East, in their infinite wisdom, and I love them, no disrespect, but I think this is a mistake. Why are they going to 20 games, T? Tell me why.
I mean, I can't give you a good reason. I liked the 18. I think it made sense, like, to have there be more space for non-con. I'm curious if you think it's different on the men's side, which has a very compelling Big East men's following. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, is it different on the women's side because the competition isn't quite as
no? I think both. They both should be at 18 games. And the reason why is because you need those out of conference quad one games if you're going to get more than 3. And I think Big East got four last year on the men and 2 for the women. So, like, if anything, this is an 11 team league. It's not, 20 team league like some of the other ones, but still, like, there's no real reason why they should be playing 20 games. Like, you couldn't give me like a tangible reason. You take away those 2 games and you add 2 quad one games to everyone's schedule, and that immediately elevates the Big East, their net ranking, like where they rank in terms of by a conference. And if they lose those 2 quad one games, so what?
Right.
Like, there's no point. Like, there's no upside. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lose-lose for both, I feel like, the men and the women on this.
Do you think it came out of challenges with scheduling non-con?
Maybe, but at the same time, it's like that's just more about it's just hard to schedule in general in both the men's and women's games. And maybe that's the thing. Like, even if you don't get to quad one, to like out of conference games against, for the women, like South Carolina, or for the men against like Duke or Kansas, it's like, so you go play Dayton or a mid-major that at home, like, you get another home game, but it's not conference. That's like a guaranteed win. Yeah. And that's no disrespect to the Big East women's game, but it's just the reality of UConn. It's been the UConn Invitational. And so I don't see why adding extra games helps. It definitely hurts the UConn women from a seeding perspective. Didn't really bother them in the NCAA tournament this year, right? But it could hurt the men on where they go, in terms of, they were an 8 seed, had to play the number 1 team in the country in the second round, almost beat them. But maybe if they're a 6 seed, 5 seed, they don't have to play them.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think what I observed from this non-conference schedule is just the amount of neutral settings that the Huskies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I love it. I mean, I get it's UConn women's basketball and they're a headliner, but I do love a classic away game. I think it's a good test. UConn's losses this year at Notre Dame and Tennessee, like, I think really propelled them. And it's good experience to play in sort of like a hostile environment when you go to neutral setting. I think there's a lot of UConn fans. It maybe feels like a glorified home game, especially because we're seeing some competing at Mohegan Sun. They'll be competing there in a Hall of Fame showcase. They'll face Utah and then the winner of Syracuse, Michigan, if they beat Utah. And then they'll be competing in Germany to start the season.
That's really cool.
Which is, cool, classy move, I feel like. So, I mean, and then Iowa in late December at the Barclays Center. They're traveling to Tampa to face USF on their home court. And then Tennessee and Ohio State are also confirmed. So, I mean, and then a home and home, the last leg of USC. That's what they have now. There's hopefully some other games coming. I'm expecting or hoping that they'll sign a home and home with South Carolina and Notre Dame.
That's right.
So, I mean, I think that, it's interesting non-con. Again, I like to see more away games. I feel like these like sort of like multi-tournament events are becoming more of a thing in a way that I don't love, because I like let's go to their campus and beat them on their campus and bring the students out and do that type of thing. But, when you're UConn, you're a headliner, you get invited to a lot of tournaments, I'm sure.
Well, now with RevShare, I think you're going to see even more neutral sites, because they're going to want to have these tournaments where there's more coin going into the pocket of UConn, from corporate sponsorships and other ancillary items. And I think that's going to be the reason why. Because listen, I'm with you whether we're talking about the women or the men. I would love to see more home and homes, but I think you're going to start to mirror each other in terms of the non-conference. I love that the women play non-conference like in the middle of Big East, like they did last year against Tennessee and South Carolina, kind of break up the doldrums of having to play the same people all the time. And I think that kind of helps too. You said it propelled them. I agree. I think that propelled them in the Notre Dame loss too, to kind of be ready and be tougher for the NCAA tournament. So no doubt, it's harder to play UConn in stores than it is to play them in a neutral site at not even Mohegan. I'm talking like Madison Square Garden or something like that. It's just, it's harder to go onto someone's campus. And even though, Madison Square Garden or Barclays Center can sound like stores, it's just not. It's still a neutral site. It's also like a clever way for them to get an extra home game and make some extra money.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, for me, it's like I just love the student section, college game day. I like the energy of a campus. It kind of brings out that nostalgia for me in college sports. But we're in pro sports now, baby. Let's just call it. It's true.
Well, listen, what's funny too is, and I think sometimes college basketball is so archaic in like their thinking. Like, you're trying to tell me that if you had UConn, South Carolina in stores, you couldn't get corporate partnerships to come in here and do all kinds of hoopla the day before, leading up to the day of the event, like you just said with college game day. Come on, man. Whether it's through a streaming platform or whoever the hell is Fox is covering UConn. So
yeah,
they could put, they talk about investment. There are opportunities everywhere to monetize.
And speaking of South Carolina, UConn in particular for a minute, right? They Final Four the last couple of years. I don't know if you saw Chantel Jennings' piece in The Athletic about kind of how they're the two powerhouses right now, and everyone is kind of trying to catch up, and how that may or may not shift in this rev share era. Do you think that's a must-have regular season game for both teams?
I think so, man. It's kind of like, it sucks that they don't play in the same conference, but it's kind of becoming the UConn Tennessee when I was growing up, where you just, if you don't play them, it's kind of like, why didn't you get a chance to see them during the regular season? You're going to probably play them in the tournament at some point, because that's just kind of because the other thing too, man, it reminds me of, I was a tennis guy, still am. You watch the two best players in the world play on the men's side between Sinner and Alcaraz the other day in the French Open. And that's what these programs are. They're going to be the dominant programs. And maybe there's going to be someone that comes in randomly and to win a title here and there, like a Mississippi State did way back when. Just someone kind of out of nowhere, like a blip on the radar screen. But for the most part, these two are they're the show. Yep. And so for them to not be playing each other in the regular season as of now, it would definitely be a what was the you try to Stephen A. Smith it. It'd be a crime against humanity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like just be not a. It's not something that you want. It's a malpractice.
Yeah, and I think both coaches and programs understand that, so I do expect them to sign it. I just want that news now. Like, I don't want to have to wait. I want to know that these two teams are playing.
I also want there to be a reality show with Gino and Dawn.
Yeah,
that's what I want.
Same.
Stick them in a house together. Like the week of the game. Oh my God, that would be the best thing ever.
Yeah,
just made $1 billion. Come on,
make
right
them
there.
Live together in the week leading.
Yeah, you do a neutral site game.
Yeah,
and it's like in like DC or something like that, right? So it's kind of like midway point. So you do it at where did the Mystics play or the Wizards, the Verizon Center or some Capital One, whatever. You do it there. You stick Gino and Dawn at Mount Vernon. No, I'm kidding. Just anywhere, like just anywhere in a room together, and they have to do interviews together.
White House, like really.
What's that?
The Situation Room in the White House. Just lean into.
Yes. Just do it. Yeah. Or Camp David. I don't care. Like put them. I want them. I want them in a room together where there's cameras everywhere, and just let them. It's just let them be the show. Their personalities alone. Come on for a day, just for a day.
Yep. Well, you heard it here first.
I'm telling you, I'm going to pitch it.
26, 27. Let's get that on the schedule.
I'm gonna call up Chelsea Sherrod from SNY and be like, hey, I got a show for SNY for you. And she can host it. There we go. Boom. I just made the whole show. It's a gift, T. It's a gift to have this much content. What can I tell you? All right. This has been another great show. Appreciate T Baker as always. You're on the Hoopscat Pod. We're out.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.